At the beginning, I mentioned one of the topics for today, and I said that one of the topics is cooperation. And Terje Haidak, in her introduction, when she said that when she looks at the mapped situation of trainers and adult education, then the scenery looks quite fragmented. So what we need more is cooperation, merging, joining. So let's talk about that more at this point, a little bit more in depth with this next presentation. Let's ask what we can learn from history to create today's society, and how the exchange of information helps us cope with these challenges that have come with the winds of change, and how to support networking in adult education. Next, I'm very happy to give the floor to Georgios Zarifis, who comes to us from the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. And I'm not going to risk mistranslating the title. The Assistant Professor of Continuing Education at the Faculty of Philosophy is his title. And his presentation is on building bridges, supporting networks, promoting membership, the true meaning of an adult education-learned society. Without further ado, Professor Zarifis, the floor is yours.
Brilliant. Well, I have to say that it is always a pleasure to be invited in one of Andras' events. This is the second event I'm participating. I was here last year. I want to thank Andras for organizing this, but I also want to thank you for being here, colleagues, adult educators. The theme today for me is, and it all comes from my experience, both as a scholar but also as an adult educator, is how to make adult education relevant. Relevant to our societies, relevant to adult learners, relevant to us. Okay? So what I'm looking at is the importance of cooperating, networking, if you like. And one of the skills that we essentially need to have, not only as adult educators or adult education professionals, if you like, but as human beings or as responsible European citizens, is to know how to cooperate, how to work together, how to network. Now, my presentation today focuses on 5 aspects. The first aspect is what is a learned society. I'm sure that many of you must know the meaning of the learned society. Andras essentially is a learned society. But how far can we go with learned societies today in Europe? The second aspect is, why do we need learned societies in adult education in particular? Are they relevant? How do they develop? The third is, how can networking be promoted in adult education? The fourth is, how existing conduits of communication and collaboration can be improved within our field of practice. And finally, what are these issues that we can prioritize within the networks that we're building? Now, what is a learned society? Essentially, many of you either participate or have some knowledge of a learned society. Normally, these are voluntary societies or organizations dedicated in scholarship and research or practice. And they often focus on a particular subject or method. Learned societies have been existing in Europe for many, many years. A very good example of very known learned societies, the British Royal Society, the French Academy, but of course in all countries, in many fields, scientific or not, there are societies that exist today. I bring Andras as a learned society example, of course, but I'm sure there are other similar societies in Estonia. We had a meeting within the project that Andras coordinates in the premises of Enea, for example, which is the non-formal Estonian society. However, I want to look at some history of how learned societies develop. In the literature you can find many information, but I think that the best way to look at learned societies historically is to see the different phases in which they develop. The early phase was until the 18th century. We're talking about learned societies developing from Renaissance until the 18th century, were local collections of literate and inquiring minds. Okay? I'm sure you must have similar examples, local or national examples here in Estonia of such early forms of learned societies. In the mid-19th century, a new model emerged. Broad-based organizations that were dedicated to popularizing new knowledge and promoting social reform. This was very popular in the mid and late 19th century, but it was also very popular in the beginning of the 20th century. Now, the third phase that also relates to what we do became the predominant form of learned society is an open organization of scholars or practitioners seeking to establish some standards and to advance research in a particular arena of academic inquiry. Okay, having in mind of what our Estonian colleague in the first presentation stressed, trying to create value. Within this attempt, if you like, one organization that had a leading role was the university. Universities, well, essentially play a leading role for many reasons, okay? However, that does not mean that universities are the only actors within the learned societies. However, there are many universities all around the world today that steer the development of such societies. Again, the example from Andras that collaborates with the University of Tallinn. The emergence of learned societies, therefore, made it possible in turn the creation of national organizations that could advance scholarly research and with universities. Now, the whole aim of developing a learned society is not simply to make a realm or a profession or a field of practice or research more known or more popular to our societies, national or local, but also to develop new disciplines or professions. You see, it's all about creating networks, finding ways of collaborating within the society. Okay? And collaboration, of course, comes with a lot of baggage from those who are members within the learned societies. Now, why do we need these type of societies in adult education today? And why are they relevant? Especially in the European context, I think what we're actually missing today in Europe is collaboration at the level of knowing each other, knowing how we think, knowing our culture, knowing the baggage that we all carry. So one way to succeed this, to collaborate more successfully, is to organize learned societies. The demographic changes, as I note here, increasing number of students, pressure from labor market demands, healthcare are some of the drivers to develop adult education learned societies. Okay? So there are many, many aspects that we can research and discuss within learned societies in adult education. The aim is to develop a dialogue between research and practice in the field. The factors, however, are augmented by the appearance of new organizations and institutions. As it has already been told, this area is largely fragmented. So we need to find a way to pull all these different fragments, all these different threads together. So a learned society can assist to that. A more global factor is also the emergence of the knowledge society. That implies a major change in knowledge production, and it recognizes that there are other actors besides those who are already committed in adult education that are involved in how adult education develops. Global economy, for example. Now, although some of these institutions, for example, universities, advance knowledge, they cannot be forced on any type of dialogue as such in this context. So we must create links. We must make sense of this fragmented knowledge that more or less makes our societies what they are today. What we need is networking. I'm talking about the act of networking, but also about the skills for networking. How can we promote networking within adult education? For the beginning, networks have a very vital role to play in stimulating critical debate. One of the issues that we not necessarily forget, but we don't discuss that much, is how to steer critical reflection within learned societies. We may discuss different issues, we may exchange opinions or ideas, but critical reflection is also very important. How can we steer critical reflection in this respect? I say critical reflection is important with learned societies because critical reflection provides the added value for learned societies to develop further. Okay. All right, I think it doesn't want to go any further. Just stuck in there? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll just... Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. No, that's fine. Now, in regions where adult education continues to be a bit marginalized and under-resourced, individuals and institutions need to be brought together, okay? But of course, this does not mean that it's only societies that do not provide any added value to adult education that need to develop such societies, okay? So the importance of networks, I think it is underestimated in adult education. And I'm not talking about big, large networks. Of course, these are also very relevant today within Europe, but I'm also talking about smaller, local networks. Through pooling resources, expertise, knowledge, and broad dissemination, networks can respond to arising national or regional challenges in a fast and efficient way. I can't stress this enough because today, I believe that the only way to go forward on what we do is to make it relevant to others. If it's not relevant, for example, what we discuss, among the members of the network or among the members of the learned society, then it has no added value. So we must find ways to make what we discuss, the dialogue that we create within the learned society, within the network, relevant to our practice, relevant to our thoughts, relevant to the challenges we're facing. Okay. Now, how can some existing conduits can be improved? I understand that in Estonia, as well as in other European countries, there are already established networks, okay? Younger or older networks. However, I want to stress some points in order to give you an idea of how we can make these networks operate, I wouldn't say better, but more efficiently. Create viable partnerships between government, business and civil society that support integrated approaches to learning and development. I think, especially in Europe, we're still far from engaging researchers, policymakers, practitioners all together. Expose people of all ages to a wide range of learning opportunities. I'm talking about intercultural learning, but I'm also talking about intergenerational learning, okay? Within an adult education network or adult learning society, young and old can be brought together. Showcase innovative projects and programs. For example, the Taking to the Top project that is it's already underway, has many aspects of networking. Build synergies within existing learning societies. In Europe, for example, we have a European Society for Research in the Education of Adults. Similar societies do exist, but they're not, however, communicate with each other. They don't collaborate with each other. Celebrate learners' achievements. I suppose certain fora or open days for adult learners is one way to do that. I know that in Estonia you organize such events. And of course develop a tradition of a learning festival, which in countries like Estonia you already have. But in countries like the one I come from, Greece, we haven't. And what are the issues that we can prioritize within our networks or learning societies? Essentially, we need to attract the interest of new partners and sectors. Just imagine a network that only works with a certain amount of members, members that are always the same. So we need to make our networks more attractive, as I said in the beginning, more relevant to all the learners that are out there, regardless of age, gender, orientation, religious or other. Financing adult education. Okay? This is also very important, and I think most networks rely on memberships. However, I also think there is a place there for social partners, but also governments to contribute in financing. Motivation and increased access. I understand that many adult educators in countries like yours are highly motivated to participate, but this is not the case in every single country all around Europe. Workplace as a learning arena. Workplace is another space in which networks can develop, and I'm talking about learning networks. Validation of prior learning. This is another aspect that can be thoroughly discussed within the premise of a learning society for adult educators. Guidance and counseling. I think, particularly in adult education, although we do discuss about the role of the adult educator as a guiding figure or a counselor, I think we need to stress this more. Professional development of adult educators and relevant staff. I'm not going to discuss this very deep in terms of what professional or professionalization means. I think my good colleague Clarissa Yogi has already discussed this thoroughly enough. Building and developing curricula. This is another aspect. And of course, curricula do not develop in a vacuum. They do need the contribution from the field of practice, from those who work with adult learners. Quality assurance. And of course, one aspect that I think it's particularly important today is active citizenship. Learn societies as triggers of making their members active citizens. I have nothing else to add in this respect. I want to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Taas kord ma annan 8 minutiks.
Again, I will give 2 minutes to each of the tables now so that you can discuss about cooperation networks, about dialogues, about creating networks, making them more efficient, and about its value for adult education. And after you're done discussing, I will come around and ask for your questions.
See 2 minutit on taas kord täis saanud ja
Your 2 minutes are up. And language-wise, you can ask the question in Estonian. And then Professor Zarifis will hear the question via interpreting, and he will answer. From what I can tell, there's active discussion at this table, so I would like to hand over the microphone to you. Okay, I will try this table at this point. Oh, you're still discussing as well. Okay. We have a question. Do you have any practical examples of good cooperation networks?
Attempts, yeah. There are some attempts in terms of developing communities of practice. But what I'm discussing here is not only a network of practitioners, okay? I'm talking about a network of practitioners, of scholars, of policymakers, okay? So I'm not focusing only on one particular aspect in the field of adult education, practice, okay? So in this respect, I don't have the experience of a good practice in what you're suggesting. They might as well exist, but if they are to make their practice and their knowledge relevant to the field, they need to build bridges. They need to become more part of a broader network.
Thank you. Katrin Aedma, and I have a question about this importance of critical reflection. You pointed that it is very important for us also to get the critical reflection. And I started to think about this, that in the service, I have been working in the service area more than 20 years. It has been one of the most difficult things to get feedback, the real feedback of the people. For example, you go to eat in some restaurant, and in this restaurant you don't like the food, but you just go away, you don't give a feedback, you just go away and you never come back. And you tell at least to the 10 of your friends, please don't go there, it was horrible. But this company cannot do nothing, cannot improve because they never get this feedback. Nowadays, due to internet, we are very happy because the service has been improved a lot because of the TripAdvisor, for example. Because everybody can give very fast feedback. And many companies, they want to be in TripAdvisor, like advised place, and they improve their service all the time, consciously, because they see the feedback and everyone can see the feedback all around the world. What do you think about the same system if there is some kind of system like TripAdvisor for the service companies, for all universities, for example, and to every company who gives adult education? Thank you.
I think it would be useful for some, but not essentially related to critical reflection. I think we need to make a distinction here between passing a judgment and reflecting critically. Critical reflection essentially has to do with revealing all the distortions, or all these aspects in life that we consider important for us. We think of them as unchangeable. Okay? So it's not simply about passing a judgment. As a tool, you mentioned TripAdvisor, there are many other tools like this in many other fields that would be useful, but I don't think it is enough. Okay? And I have to say this, each and every of these tools carries a certain degree of values itself that are not instantly apparent, visible to those who actually use the tool. Okay? So we cannot monitor the motives behind the people who actually pass a judgment or send a comment about a provider or a hotel in TripAdvisor. For example, what some might like, you might not. So it's not an issue of passing judgments in this respect. Critical reflection in adult education, particularly in this area, in terms of developing networks, has to do with how do we value our roles within adult education. As learners, as educators, as teachers, as administrators, as scholars and researchers. Okay? What are the distortions or challenges we're facing? And ultimately, the aim of critical reflection is emancipation. Okay? Making us, or providing us the opportunity to feel and be free. Okay? Free from all this oppression, social oppression, financial oppression, political oppression, etc. So we need to contextualize critical reflection in this respect, instead of simply making relevant to tools like the ones you mentioned.
Okay, we have no more time for any further questions, so thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.